The Ukrainian Security Service conducted a combined unmanned strike on the Black Sea, targeting a Russian radar base stationed on temporarily occupied oil rigs. Footage was posted by the Security Service on May 19th, showcasing an FPV drone hit a high-value Russian Neva radar used for airspace surveillance. Additionally, a Ukrainian unmanned surface vessel struck storage and housing facilities hosting Russian military personnel inside the so-called Boyko Towers oil rigs. A Russian drone strike on an evacuation vehicle killed 9 civilians in the Sumy region in the early hours of Saturday morning. President Zelenskyy confirmed that among those killed was an entire family, a father, mother, and daughter. 7 others were injured and transported to local hospitals for treatment, stated the head of the Sumy Regional Military Administration, Leo XIV. He stressed that a Russian Lancet drone guided by a reconnaissance UAV hit a vehicle carrying people fleeing the frontline border area near Biopilya. The National Police noted that the bus was intentionally targeted and classified the incident as a violation of international humanitarian law, while they collect evidence at the scene to document the aftermath. Pope Leo XIV granted his first foreign leader audience to the Ukrainian president and the First Lady. According to Reuters, the meeting took place only hours after presiding over a mass in which the new pope was officially installed as the Catholic leader. According to a statement from the Office of the President of Ukraine, the discussions focused on the war in Ukraine and the potential role of the Holy See in mediation efforts and humanitarian issues, including the release of prisoners and the return of deported Ukrainian children. Earlier, Pope Leo XIV condemned Russia's invasion of Ukraine as a true invasion and being imperialist in its nature in his first public remarks on the war. Reuters noted that in an interview with Peruvian media, the newly elected American-born pontiff criticized global leaders for avoiding clear acknowledgement of the atrocities and described the war as both a war and a humanitarian crisis. Zelenskyy met with U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance and Secretary of State Marco Rubio on Sunday, ahead of the inauguration of Pope Leo XIV. The meeting marked the first official engagement between Zelenskyy and Vance since their public disagreement in Washington earlier this year. According to the Office of the President of Ukraine, the parties discussed the May 15th peace talks in Istanbul. Zelenskyy informed the U.S. officials that the Russian delegation sent to the negotiations was of a low level and lacked the authority to make binding decisions. He reaffirmed Ukraine's readiness for genuine diplomacy and emphasized the need for a full and unconditional ceasefire. Russia launched a record attack of 273 drones on Ukraine, hitting the Kyiv region and killing a woman, reported the Regional Military Administration on May 18th. According to governmental officials, a woman born in 1997 was killed in the Obuchiv district as the result of the strike, with 3 civilians suffering injuries: a 61-year-old man, a 59-year-old woman, and a 4-year-old child. All were hospitalized. The strike partially destroyed a private residence and damaged a nearby multi-story building. In the Fostiv district, fires broke out following damage to a 500 square meter warehouse and an adjacent utility building. A separate fire engulfed a 5,000 square meter medical facility. Oscar Jenkins, an Australian volunteer, was handed a 13-year sentence in Russian-backed Luhansk. This was reported by the BBC, referencing the so-called Luhansk prosecutor's office in temporarily occupied eastern Ukraine. On May 16th, the Supreme Court of the self-proclaimed Luhansk People's Republic sentenced the former schoolteacher and volunteer to a high-security penal colony on charges of mercenary activity. Jenkins, a native of Melbourne, was captured last December in the Luhansk region when a video surfaced of him being hit in the face by Russian forces while his hands were tied. They asked him if he was being paid to fight in Ukraine. In January, Australia summoned the Russian ambassador over false reports that he had been killed following his capture. Since then, The Australian government has repeatedly called for his release. Australia's retired fleet of M1A1 Abrams tanks is finally on its way to Ukraine after the United States granted the required re-export license. They are already deployed to the front line, said Zelenskyy on May 18th. During a meeting in Rome, he thanked the Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese for the shipment, noting that the Abrams tanks are already helping the Ukrainian soldiers defend the country. Canberra pledged 49 refurbished M1A1 AIM-SA tanks, vehicles the Australian Army operated from 2007 to 2024 across 2 armoured regiments. Loading began recently, Australian media reported, but defence officials refused to disclose the tank's route or arrival date for security reasons. Before departure, each vehicle underwent light refurbishment and the removal of sensitive Australian-only equipment. Finland has joined the list of EU countries channeling proceeds from frozen Russian assets towards Ukraine's defense. Under a new €90 million agreement with the European Commission, Finland will deliver ammunition to Ukraine sourced directly from Finnish defense manufacturers. According to the Helsinki government press service on May 19th, the initiative is funded through the European Peace Facility and marks one of the first practical uses of immobilized Russian assets to strengthen Ukraine's battlefield capabilities. We've secured additional financing to support Ukraine using funds from frozen Russian assets, said Finnish Defense Minister Antti Hakkinen. These purchases will not only support Ukraine's defense, but also boost employment in Finland's defense sector. I'm very pleased with this outcome, stated Hakkinen. A Liberian-flagged oil tanker bound for Rotterdam was seized by Russian authorities on Saturday as it was traversing the Gulf of Finland along a route previously cleared with Tallinn, Moscow, and Helsinki, reported ERR Estonian media on May 18th. The ship, Green Admire, departed Estonia's northeastern port loaded with shale oil and entered Russian territorial waters on what Tallinn's officials described as an established, safe deep-water corridor used by large vessels to avoid the shallow waters in Estonia's maritime zone. Reuters reported that the Baltic Sea nations are on high alert after a string of power cables, telecom links, and gas pipelines were sabotaged since Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022. Recently, Russia deployed a Su-35 fighter jet as Estonia attempted to alter the course of a ship belonging to the Shadow Fleet, transporting sanctioned Russian oil. However, Estonia will continue to check Russian vessels, told Prime Minister Kristen Michal to Reuters on Sunday.
I would think that everybody around the Baltic Sea and also in Danish Straits will keep monitoring and will keep checking the Shadow Fleet ships. Russia is getting somewhat nervous about it. That does not change the idea that, to be honest, Russia has more than half, let's say, it's a crude estimate, but I would say about 60% of the oil revenues coming from Shadow Fleet ships. So for them, it's quite important monitoring running. But for us, we know at first that this is Russia's way of having money, waging war in Ukraine, killing children and women and everybody, and also having hybrid operations against European NATO countries, also in the States or wherever.
Denmark announced its 26th security assistance package for Ukraine, pledging close to $635 million over 4 years to support the country's defense capabilities. According to a statement released by the Danish government on May 18th, part of the costs will be reimbursed by the EU's European Peace Facility. Copenhagen will also underwrite new equipment for the Ukrainian Air Force and finance expanded training facilities under the Nordic Baltic Brigade initiative, which helps equip Ukrainian ground units. Officials stress that large-scale military support will remain essential even if fighting pauses or a peace accord is signed, given Russia's ongoing aggression.